Harrington Court now dealing with more than 50 COVID-19 cases between staff and residents. The Department of Public Health intervening and is assisting with infection control in hopes to minimize cases. 46 residents and 11 staff members all testing positive for COVID-19 recently here at the Harrington Court Nursing Home.
And I do think they transferred some of these patients to Quinnipiac because they have a COVID unit there.
Genesis Healthcare, owner of Harrington Court, tells Fox 61 they are now screening residents and patients for symptoms 3 times daily, while DPH is on the ground doing infection control. Attributing the outbreak to a patient that was admitted to their observation unit, that patient coming from a local hospital. A final report reviewing the response to COVID-19 in Connecticut nursing homes was released Thursday from the Mathematica Policy Research, the governor ordering that independent review back in June. The report revealing across the state 2,849 people in nursing homes died from COVID-19 through the end of July. More than 80% of those were white, 13% black, and 5% Hispanic. The average age, 83. In Colchester, the first selectman says it's the first time COVID cases have appeared in one of the town's nursing homes, but she's more concerned about the rise in COVID cases throughout her community.
I think what's concerning to us is that for the longest time, we hardly had any cases. We got up to around 48 and we just held there forever. And so this is more than doubling our number. And so that has everybody's attention.
Sharing a number of certain families in the area have contracted the virus, and she's alarmed about those not following safety guidelines.
I'm not worried about the outbreak in Harrington causing an outbreak in our community. I'm more worried about the people who are just not as diligent as they were before. We are seeing a more cavalier approach with people not wearing masks, not social distancing, gathering in large groups.
I'm pretty much out of the way of crowds. There's too many people who are not wearing their masks today, and that concerns me also.
Also, in that nursing home report, 23 steps the state is being advised to take in order to prepare for a second wave of COVID-19, including a way to allow visitation, calling it a right for all residents. In Colchester tonight, Nia Maldonado, Fox 61 News.